Welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Meetinghouse of Provincetown, where we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and where we support each other on our spiritual search for truth and meaning. My name is Rev Kate Wilkinson, and I am so glad that you have joined us this morning. Through the miracles of the internet and the YouTube and the volunteers who know what they are doing with technology. Thank you, Will. I feel you with me this morning. And I also thank our skeleton worship crew who is here with me in the sanctuary. You represent multitudes. Now, before we begin our service, I have a few announcements to share with you. First, I just want to thank everyone who joined us on Christmas Eve, either out on our lawn or through our live stream of the 5 o'clock service. To the safety team and worship team members who were our ushers, to our staff and to our staff by marriage, Lisa and Abe, to Will and Mary, Brenda and Bill, and our angel Peter Donnelly singing in the window. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful night, and you made our holiday really special. Next week's service will be live streamed from our sanctuary like today without a congregation present. Our guest preacher will be Reverend Bill Clark. Our Zoom coffee hours remain on Tuesday evenings at 5 o'clock to allow our worship leaders and tech team to participate in that as well. The board of directors will be meeting after the service next Sunday to discuss, among their other business, the most recent COVID statistics post-holidays and to make some decisions about how to move forward with our Sunday services. We are not alone in making these difficult decisions about when to gather in person, but neither is there anyone telling us what to do. The Unitarian Universalist Association offers guidance, but they are guiding 1,000 congregations, each with very different locations, populations, and circumstances. So please lend your support to our thoughtful and hardworking board of directors as they discern what is best for our congregation and our community. And we take a moment to remember that love is the spirit of this meeting house.
Love is the spirit of this meeting house.
This is our great covenant.
This is our great covenant.
To dwell together in peace.
To dwell together in peace.
To seek the truth in love.
To seek the truth in love.
And to help one another.
And to help one another.
At this time, I invite Kathleen to light our chalice. And while we light our chalice here at the meeting house, I invite you to light a candle wherever you are. In that way, we can feel together, even while we are apart.
As we gather together on this first Sunday of the new year, we light our chalice, symbol of our shared faith. We gather on the edge of the new year, saddened by our losses, cherishing our joys, aware of our failures, mindful of days gone by. We gather on the cusp of this new year, eager to begin anew, hopeful for what lies ahead, promising to make changes, anticipating tomorrows and tomorrows. We join one another in embracing all that life offers, the good and the bad, the endings and the beginnings, the light and the dark.
Please join me now in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Our prayer this morning is by Rev Kate Wilkinson. Great Spirit of life, as a new year begins, we turn inward to reflect about the state of our lives. What lessons have we learned in this past year, and which new ones now call us forward? To whom do we still owe an apology or expression of thanks? And with whom must we draw fresh boundaries? As we pause from our regular rhythms of rush, 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 we open ourselves to new perspectives and possibilities. We give thanks for these moments and for the wisdom they afford us. May they help bring us together in the sacred dynamics of life so that we as individuals and as members of this community might reach our full potential. As we step across this threshold, let this new year be a year of greater awe and gratitude, of deeper kindness and acceptance, and more courageous acts of conviction. For a kinder, more equitable and sustainable world is not only possible, she is on her way. And in the quietness of this sacred community, we can ever hear her breathing. Amen.
For a new beginning. For a New Beginning by John O'Donoghue. In out-of-the-way places of the heart where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight when your courage kindled, and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream. A path of plenitude opened before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm. For your soul senses the world that awaits you.
Now is the time in our service where we take a collection for the ongoing support of this meeting house and our shared ministry. As we enjoy a musical reflection, we welcome your donations through PayPal or Venmo. You can find that information on our website, UUMH.org. Whether you give online or through other ways, we are so grateful for your support.
Amen.
This week, as I looked forward to celebrating the new year, I began to wonder about its history. Just what is the story of the new year? Why is it celebrated in the middle of winter? How long have people been raising toasts and counting down to midnight? The earliest recorded festivities associated with the idea of a new year date back 4,000 years to ancient Babylon. For the Babylonians, the new year did not come in the midst of winter, but on the first new moon following the vernal equinox, the day in late March having an equal amount of sunlight and darkness. They marked the occasion with a massive religious festival called a Kitu, named for the Sumerian word for barley, which was cut in the spring. The festival went on for 11 days with a different ritual for each day. In addition to the new year, Atiku celebrated the mythical victory of the Babylonian sky god Marduk over the evil sea goddess Tiamat. And as often happens, politicians and statesmen took advantage of this story to superimpose a political purpose on the celebrations as well. It was during this time that a new king was crowned, or that the current ruler's divine mandate was symbolically renewed. Throughout antiquity, civilizations around the world have developed their own calendars, typically pinning the first day of the year to an agricultural or astronomical event. In Egypt, for instance, the year began with the annual flooding of the Nile, which coincided with the rising of the star Sirius. The first day of the Chinese New Year occurred with the second new moon after the winter solstice. The Jewish New Year, based on a lunar calendar, is one that we celebrate in the fall, called Rosh Hashanah. The early Roman calendar consisted of 10 months and 304 days, with each new year beginning at the vernal equinox. According to tradition, it was created by Romulus, the founder of Rome, in the 8th century BC. A later king, Pompilius, is credited with adding the months of Januarius and Februarius. Over the centuries, the calendar fell out of sync with the sun, and in 46 BC, the emperor Julius Caesar decided to solve the problem by consulting with the most prominent astronomers and mathematicians of his time. He introduced the Julian calendar, which closely resembles the calendar that we use today. As part of his reform, Caesar instituted January 1st as the first day of the year, partly to honor the month's namesake, Janus, the Roman god of beginnings, whose two faces allowed him to look both back into the past and forward into the future. Romans celebrated by offering sacrifices to Janus, exchanging gifts with one another, decorating their homes with laurel branches, and attending raucous parties. Did you know that the New Year's Eve parties that we celebrate today have such a long history? And of course, the reveling throughout the ages has included special foods, some of which are thought to bring luck for the coming year. In Spain, right before midnight, people quickly eat a dozen grapes, symbolizing their hopes for the months ahead. In many parts of the world, traditional New Year's dishes feature legumes, which are thought to resemble coins and herald future financial success. The Italians eat lentils. Southern Americans serve black-eyed peas or hoppin' john. Because pigs represent progress and prosperity in some cultures, pork appears on the New Year's Eve table in Cuba, Austria, Hungary, and Portugal. Ring-shaped cakes and pastries, a sign that the year has come full circle, round out the feast in the Netherlands, Mexico, and Greece. Sounds like a good excuse to eat a donut. In Sweden and Norway, rice pudding is served with an almond hidden inside. It's said that whoever finds the nut can expect 12 months of good fortune. And foods and parties aren't the only long-held traditions. The practice of making resolutions for the new year is also thought to have first caught on among the ancient Babylonians. They made promises in order to earn the favor of the gods and start the year off on the right foot. They vowed to pay off debts and return borrowed farm equipment. And what are some other customs? On New Year's Eve, 1862, abolitionists held vigils as they waited for President Lincoln to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. He did so the next day, freeing enslaved people in the states that had seceded from the Union. The vigil is echoed in the New Year's Eve watch night services that African American churches still hold. How many of you took in the fireworks displays in Provincetown, Boston, and other places Friday night? Did you know that in doing so you were helping to scare away the evil spirits? Transitional times bring danger. But in cultures around the world, people bang drums, light firecrackers, and even beat the corners of their rooms in order to spook the unwanted creatures lurking in the night. Fireworks were invented in the 7th century in China for this very purpose. And of course, another common tradition worldwide is singing songs to welcome the new year. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and auld lang syne? Have you ever stopped to wonder what exactly auld lang syne means? In the Scots language, it translates directly as old long since. But in English, it makes more sense as times gone by, especially times fondly remembered. Some Scottish storytellers begin their fairy tales with, "In days of auld lang syne," much as we would say, "once upon a time." The lyrics were written by Scottish poet Robert Burns in 1788, although it was based on an older Scottish folk song that had been in circulation for many years by then. My favorite line is, "We'll take a cup of kindness yet for auld lang syne." The song is a bittersweet one. But how did a Scottish folk song become a New Year's Eve tradition in the United States? Well, Guy Lombardo, of course. He was originally from a part of Ontario that had a large Scots population, and he and his band were accustomed to bands ending their shows with this Scottish standard. So when they were invited to play a New York City radio concert on New Year's Eve in 1929, they of course ended the night with Auld Lang Syne. The concert, which was later televised, ran every year till 1977 and was the precursor to Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve. Which brings us to the most iconic New Year's tradition, the dropping of a giant ball in New York City's Times Square at the stroke of midnight. Millions of people around the world watch this event, which has taken place almost every year since 1907. The exceptions occurred in 1942 and in 1943, when the country, having now entered World War II, feared that the celebrations would be a prime target for an attack. New York City had ordered a dim out meant to conceal the city from the sky. But why the dropping of a ball? Well, long before battery-powered wristwatches were a common possession of the everyman, people needed a way to communicate the time. A time ball is a large painted wooden or metal ball that is raised on a very high pole and then dropped at a specific time. The ball, which can be seen for miles, is raised halfway up 5 minutes before an appointed time to alert people near and far. Then 2 to 3 minutes before it is raised the whole way, and then at the appointed hour, usually 1 p.m., it is dropped. The ancient Greeks had similar devices in the main squares of cities, and in England, one was installed at the Greenwich Observatory in 1833, so that the tall ships in the Thames could set their marine chronometers. The ball still drops there daily at 1 o'clock. And for centuries, shortly before midnight on New Year's Eve, bell ringers have made their way to England's church spires, where on the stroke of midnight, they begin the ancient ritual of ringing out the old year and ringing in the new. In 1850, Alfred Lord Tennyson published his New Year's poem, Ring Out Wild Bells. Ring out wild bells to the wild sky, the flying cloud, the frosty light. The year is dying in the night. Ring out wild bells and let him die. Ring out the old, ring in the new, ring happy bells across the snow. The year is going, let him go. Ring out the false, ring in the true. Ring out the grief that saps the mind, for those that here we see no more. Ring out the feud of rich and poor. Ring in redress to all mankind. Ring out a slowly dying cause and ancient forms of party strife. Ring in the nobler modes of life, with sweeter manners, purer laws. Ring out the want, the care, the sin, the faithless coldness of the times. Ring out my mournful rhymes, but ring the fuller minstrel in. Ring out false pride in place and blood, the civic slander and the spite. Ring in the love and truth and right. Ring in the common love of good. Ring out old shapes of foul disease. Ring out the narrowing lust of gold. Ring out the 1,000 wars of old. Ring in the 1,000 years of peace. Ring in the valiant man and free the larger heart, the kindlier hand. Ring out the darkness of the land. Ring in the Christ that is to be. Tennyson wrote this in honor of the new year, but also as a memorial to his friend, Arthur Henry Holman, who had died unexpectedly at the age of 22. Arthur was engaged to Tennyson's sister, Amelia, and the family was very worried that Amelia's ongoing grief would ruin her life. Tennyson hoped that she would be able to let go of some of this sadness and move forward. He also hoped society would leave behind some of its greed and class divisions and usher in a new era of compassion. He hoped to usher out disease. He hoped the world would cease its warring and that the new year would bring 1,000 years of peace. And here we are, dearly hoping the same things 172 years later. So now you know some of the story of the new year, how it came to be, how it has changed, how it's celebrated in different places, how much is just the same, century upon century. But there's another way to think about the story of the new year, and that is to think about our story of the new year, the story that we are telling ourselves about the year now before us. Perhaps you didn't realize that you were doing this, but most of us have already begun to craft that story. Have you said to any friends, I hope 2022 is better than the last 2 years? I know I have. Or have you succumbed to the gloomy thought of, oh my God, another year of this? On New Year's Day, did you make any New Year's resolutions? I'm going to meditate more, or drink less, or keep in better touch with friends who don't live near me. Creating those intentions is part of drafting the story of 2022, of writing in who and how we want to be. And so is processing our anxieties about the coming months, or ordering seeds for our spring gardens. And so is deciding to join in the first worship of the new year of this faith community. In so many ways, we are setting the course for the new year already. And what of the story that we have written about the year now past? As we close our 2021 diaries, what story stays with us? What memories do we carry forward? For we cannot bring the whole year with us into the new. We make choices. Our hearts and brains make choices about what to hold on to, what to leave behind. Driving home from my grandmother's on Christmas, I asked my mother about a difficult event from her far past. Isn't it terrible, she said. I can't remember. Not terrible at all, I said. Sometimes our memories offer us the kindness of forgetting. Sometimes we offer ourselves the kindness of forgiving, of moving on. Sometimes the edges are worn off of our grief so that it is less sharp to carry. It's something only poets seem to be able to capture in words. Robert Burns and Alfred Lloyd Tennyson, Robert Frost. Do you have hope for the future? Someone asked Robert Frost toward the end. Yes, and even for the past, he replied. That it will turn out to have been all right for what it was. Something we can accept. Mistakes made by the selves we had to be. Not able to be perhaps what we wished, or what, looking back, half the time it seems we could so easily have been, or ought. The future, yes, and even for the past, that it will become something we can bear. At this threshold of the new year, we are like the god Janus, looking both backward and forward with our two faces, creating stories of both the old and the new. I invite you to take some time this week to process all that has happened in the year just closed, to think about what you want to leave behind and what you want to carry forward. And then take some time also to set your intentions for the months ahead. Not resolutions exactly, but hopes and dreams, plans and wishes. Put them into words. What is your story of the new year? May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. It has become our practice to pose a question based on the theme of the service each week. It can be a topic of sharing at your dinner table tonight or with friends during the week. And if you'd like to delve deeper into this question, you can join us on Zoom Tuesdays at 5 o'clock. Please let us know if you need that link. Here is our question for this week, since we are embodying Janus with our two faces. At this threshold moment of the new year, do you find yourself looking backward or forward more? At this threshold moment of the new year, do you find yourself looking backward or forward? Thank you for joining us this morning, and Happy New Year.